Hey guys, welcome to a new series I'm doing right here at Slippy Slides. It's all about taking the camera in our favourite games to see the things that we've always wanted to see but maybe couldn't, whether it be hidden places, Easter eggs, or just exploring the mechanics of how games work. You might have guessed by now, I'm going to be taking a look at the very first Nintendo 64 game I ever bought, and still a classic. It is of course Mario 64. So, welcome guys to episode 1 of Slipping Out. Alright, so one of the first parts of Mario 64 that we come across, other than being able to stretch Mario's face, is the menu screen. And interestingly at this point we can move the camera, and as you can see there, the menu box is fully 3D. The other cool thing about this menu is once we select an option we can see the coloured rectangle fly towards us, but again by moving the camera we can see this from another angle. So I'm just going to try and click on the return text to see if I can get this green menu to go back so I can show you guys what it looks like. So there we go. It's a bit awkward because things have moved around since I moved the camera, but if I click the other menu we can see this purple one fly up, and you'll notice that the text is always on the camera no matter where I move it, but the 3D background is separate. The first question that I wanted to find the answer to in Mario 64 was just where is Peach while she's asking us to visit the castle. If we zoom right out, we can see Peach is floating up high above the castle, and she's actually horizontal, not vertical. Once she's disappeared, Lakitu appears below and does his tour around the castle grounds, but we've already seen that, so let's not waste too much time. One thing I should mention at this point before we continue is throughout the video you may notice that objects disappear and reappear quite randomly, but this was one of the techniques for saving memory. So often objects that couldn't be seen by the player at that certain time, like the castle tower behind me and the door, Mario's facing the wrong way, so these will be dropped to save the memory. So let's go ahead and take a look inside the castle, and from here we can see the small box area that we walk into just behind the door, and this can also be seen behind the door that's lower down inside the moat, and obviously we'd be able to come through here once the moat's lowered. And also we can see this in other places like underneath the moat where this metal grid is, where we drop down for the invisible cap, so we can only see what's essential. If you ever wondered when and how do the rooms in Peach's castle load up, well I'm going to show you. We can see whilst we're stood in a large room, no rooms are loaded up beyond the doors, so when do they load? Well, you can see me here moving Mario backwards and forwards just in front of the door that leads to Peach's slide room, and you can see the room appearing and disappearing as I get closer. Once Mario enters the room, the previous room is gone, leaving only the room that Mario is standing in loaded. Something I noticed quite early on whilst I was filming this first episode is a thing called Billboarding, and if you're not too sure what that is, basically it's when the developers give the impression of a 3D model, but it's actually just a 2D texture that always faces the camera. Some of the characters in Mario 64 use this, and even King Bob-omb himself doesn't escape this technique of saving precious memory. Talking of saving memory, check this out. By zooming the camera in on Mario when normally it should be quite far out, we can see how Mario turns into a low poly version of himself. And what about the cannons? What's inside when Mario can't get into them? Let's go and take a look and see what the cannon turret looks like from the inside. Well, we can see the cannons missing for a start. But what about once the cannons open and we can get inside? Well, let me just kill these Goombas and then we'll go and take a look. Now the interesting thing about moving the camera at this point is we can actually move it whilst Mario is inside the cannon, and it doesn't change the direction of which Mario is fired. That's always the last position the cannon was in before we move the camera, but it does give us some great action shots of Mario flying through the air. Moving on to something a little more spooky, check out Big Boo, and I always wondered where he disappeared to after he went through the wall. So if we move the camera out we can see, obviously we've learnt by now there is nothing going to be on the other side of the door until we go through it. But where does Big Boo go? Does he just disappear? Does he fade out? Or does he carry on going? Well, there we go, he seems to just fade away, which is more than what I thought he would do. I thought he'd just disappear actually. So let's carry on through the door. Alright guys, let's take a look at the back garden of the castle, and it's pretty obvious by now that there isn't going to be too much around the outside of the map, other than what we can see from the inside when we are Mario. However, one thing that I did notice was the lack of a castle roof, and of course from the front we can access the roof later in the game, but we never get up there from the back, so it's never really loaded into the map. Now, did you ever wonder what was beyond the waterfall whilst inside Metal Cap's switch course? Well, I did, so let's go and take a look. And whilst we're out here, we can see this white texture beyond the waterfall, and I can only imagine that's there so as to give an illusion of light coming through the transparent water texture. Or maybe it's because if the camera ever did go through the waterfall, you'd only see white rather than black. I'll let you guys decide on that. I was also quite interested to see what happens when Mario goes through the waterfall. Well, we can see we just kind of get respawned outside in the waterfall of the castle moat. Invisible Cap Zone now, and there is a bit of a story I'm going to tell you about this course. So, when I was a kid, me and a couple of friends spent hours in this course trying not to complete it, but to jump from the top of the slide to try and hit the far wall before being kicked from the course, and it turned into a bit of a competition to see who could reach it first, but I don't think anyone ever achieved this greatness. So there you go, check it out, Will and Ben, if you are out there watching, you know who you are. I finally managed to hit the wall before being kicked from the course. And if anyone else out there manages to do this, then let me know in the comments, because that must mean you're awesome at Mario 64 too. Alright, enough messing around, let's take a look at two of the more strange rooms in the castle, the first being the mirror room, and by flying the camera through the mirror, we can see Lakitu on the accessible side is now missing, and of course that's because we never see Lakitu during normal play, because the camera represents him. By flying the camera around, we can also make Mirror Mario and Lakitu disappear and reappear, and I also managed to get this strange situation where Lakitu was hiding on the mirror side behind one of the columns. Of course you wouldn't normally be able to see this, and I'm not even sure why this happened. I can only think that this is maybe a default position for Lakitu when Mario is looking away from the mirrors, but if anyone does know, then feel free to answer in the comments. The other room we're going to take a quick look at is the optical illusion corridor that leads to Tiny Huge Island. And if we fly the camera outside the map, we get a good perspective of the small corridor and the large corridor together, which gives us a good idea of how this area was made. dire docks, and one of the things I always wanted to know was what was beyond the mountains surround. Well, here it is, and we can see the water extends quite a long way beyond those. But other than that, there's not too much out there. The Bowser courses did cause me some technical issues with trying to film the whole course all at once, mainly because again different objects in the course were loading up at different times depending on where the camera was. I did find, however, by pausing the game it loaded the whole course, giving us a chance to see them from top to bottom, which was pretty cool. One thing you may have missed when playing Mario 64 is the way that the fish in the secret aquarium circle above Mario. Now you can see this from the normal camera angle, but I wanted to show you this from another angle because I thought it was pretty cool to see how they follow Mario in a straight line when we're swimming, and then they go back into the circling pattern again once we stop. Yet another thing that I always wondered was what was inside the ship whilst the eel was sticking its head out. Of course later on we can go through that hole, but at the moment we can't. Now of course the ship is hollow, but you can see this black texture that covers the hole, basically so we can't see through to the back of the map, and it also does a good job of making it look like it's just dark inside the window. But if we take the camera right through the back of the map, we can see the full length of the eel is sticking out the back of the map. Let's take a quick look at what happens when we solve the puzzle inside the ship, and we get the illusion that the ship is now floating to the surface. In fact, it's just the camera shaking and the water level lowering. We can also see this happen when we drain the water from the moat. Inside Peach's secret slide room, if we take a closer look, we can see that behind the picture that we jumped through, there's a small box area. But it turns out these are also behind the other pictures that we cannot pass through. This is probably just a case of copy and paste, or could it be for a future DLC? Who knows? Of course, I was only joking about the DLC, but something more serious is the mystery of the endless stairs. Now, a lot of people know how this was done, but if you don't know and you don't want to know, then thank you for watching and turn off now. If you are still with us, then let's get into it. The fact is, of course, that the stairs are not endless. As you can see from this angle, whilst Mario is running, he's just being moved back to a previous position on the stairs, which makes you believe that they are endless. And I believe in the DS version on the minimap you can even see this happening. So that's all there is to it, and I'll even spin the camera around and take it up to the top just to show you that it is there. And after all that running, Mario seems tired and so am I, so that is it for the end of episode 1 of Slipping Out. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope to catch you in episode 2 coming very soon, but for now, as always, take care and stay slippy.